Hello, I am Angelus Demonus, and on this video, I would like to discuss and compare the Deep Dungeon, Palace of the Dead, Endwalker Machinist versus Shadowbringer Machinist. Machinist and Shadowbringers was the most popular job to use to obtain the Necromancer title from Palace of the Dead, based on the amount of clears people had. So the question is Machinist easier or harder in Endwalker? The very quick answer is, it's the same. Nothing has really changed, and your chances of clearing Palace of the Dead on Machinist is no different now than it was before. Let's go into more specific details. I will highlight some very specific adjustments and changes that are worth mentioning in terms of Endwalker versus Shadowbringers. Floor 91 to 140 seems more difficult. Starting at floor 141 plus seems normal. Bosses starting at 150 are the same experience. Example, floor 170 boss. The floor 100 boss is a lot more difficult. A floor 180 Behemoth comparison, Endwalker versus Shadowbringers. Floor 91 to 140 seems more difficult. From my own preliminary runs, and talking with the community about their experiences, floor 91 to 140 specifically seems noticeably harder. A small example I can provide is the side-by-side of enemies in the floor 101 plus set. On the left is Endwalker, and on the right is Shadowbringers. The enemies in Endwalker are seemingly taking longer to kill versus back in Shadowbringers. Again, this change feels apparent specifically from floor 91 to 140. Floor 141 plus seems normal. Once you get to floor 141 plus, everything seems back to normal. There typically was a small difficulty spike stepping into floor 141 plus back in Shadowbringers. In Endwalker, however, because your previous set is at an apparent higher difficulty, the transition into 141 plus is much less spooky. Here, I have two comparisons of Endwalker Machinist versus Shadowbringer Machinist. Considering how there was quite the difference back in floor 101 plus in terms of how fast or slow enemies were dying, the enemies starting at floor 141 plus are dying at nearly the same exact GCD. Definitely something noticeable and worth noting. The takeaway from these 2 points is that you should buckle up when you step into floor 91 plus, a little more than you did back in Shadowbringers, but expect everything to be back to normal difficulty on floor 141 plus. Bosses starting at floor 150 are the same experience. Example, the floor 170 boss. On the left is Endwalker, and on the right is Shadowbringers. To follow up about floor 141 plus, feeling very close to how it did in Shadowbringers, here is a side-by-side of the floor 170 boss from beginning to end. I have sped up the attempt so you can get a quick idea of how both boss fights went. If you wish to see the fight normal speed, I will have the links to the original videos in the description below. Both runs had strength and steel on, and the kill times of the bosses were nearly identical. I'm sure my rotation was not perfect in one way or another, but for each fight to be very close in duration should be enough to showcase how in Endwalker you should expect the same experience as in Shadowbringers. Later in this video, you will see the 180 Behemoth fight in detail. That fight will also end at pretty much the same timing both in Endwalker and Shadowbringers, further indicating that the high level bosses will be the same experience now in Endwalker than it was before in Shadowbringers. The floor 100 boss is a lot more difficult. Although we had just talked about floor 91 to 140 being harder, the floor 100 boss gets a notable mention. I have had to adjust the strategy I've done for years because of the Endwalker changes, if that gives any indication. The problems you will encounter on the floor 100 boss in Endwalker are the following. In general, either the boss has more HP relatively speaking, or we are doing less damage than before. This is very clear doing a side-by-side of the Endwalker floor 100 fight versus the Shadowbringer floor 100 fight. Lust will do noticeably less damage than it did before, which means using the duration of Lust to push the boss to a lower HP will no longer be as ideal. It is not to say it's impossible, but you will have much more difficult time doing so. In Shadowbringers, the adds will almost always die to 2 GCDs of Lust. In Endwalker, it has been taking 3 GCDs. The boss and the adds will seemingly hit you for much more damage percentage-wise in Endwalker than it did in Shadowbringers. During a previous attempt on Red Mage in Endwalker, I got spooked by a simultaneous triple glass punch which nearly killed me, which was something I had no concern about in Shadowbringers, hence the mention of the damage adjustments. Some really quick math comparing damage shows about a 3 to 5% increase of damage intake, relatively speaking to the stat squish. Because of this, keeping multiple adds alive at the same time will be very dangerous if you are not ready for the incoming damage, or if you are in Lust Resolution without a quick way to heal. The suggested Endwalker strategy I recommend is to use 1 Lust and 2 Resolutions, versus the old Shadowbringer strategy of 1 Lust and 1 Resolution. The idea here is you utilize 1 resolution to eliminate the first and second set of adds, and then use the second resolution to eliminate the third set of adds. Even though there is a variance of the strategy displayed here, the difference in kill times might show what you're dealing with now, and why this deserves a mention. So now we go back to Rezo, and again, this is like we're just demonstrating a bit of a safer strat, because let me tell you, I mean, I can bust out the Red Mage attempt, and you'll see the Red Mage attempt gets way too spicy when I'm trying to do my old strat of one lost, 1 reso. So I think that's the safer strat you want to go to, which keeps the most minimal risk of this fight. Because this fight has gotten harder. The adds hit you really hard. And then the Lust, and specifically the Lust, just does not have enough of a punch anymore. It doesn't carry you through this fight, so that's what I would suggest. You always, 3 resos is the standard strategy. Initially, I mean, up until Endwalker, I pretty much had it optimized to do 1 reso, one Lust. So, you know, you keep the reso, you know, you want the resos later, of course. But now, I just don't think it's practical for most people to try to do a 1 Lust, 1 reso. Like, it's just not clean. It's just pretty dangerous. Maybe a tank can pull it off, but I think it's just dangerous engagement if you try to squeeze it into one Lust, 1 reso. I mean, at this point, you kind of don't need the Lust, but the Lust is kind of burn it anyway. A floor 180 Behemoth comparison. Endwalker versus Shadowbringers. Probably the most important part of the Machinist Necromancer title attempt is Behemoth. The short answer is that this fight is how you would expect it back in Shadowbringers. I'll run a side-by-side of my Endwalker Behemoth attempt and my Shadowbringer attempt. We've had a number of community members go back in on Machinist during Endwalker, and all of them have reported no significant changes or awkward situations. One had reported they killed Behemoth in the same GCD both in Endwalker and Shadowbringers. Using a Tincture of Dexterity is the more popular strategies for runners, but I've always stuck with the healing strategy for my attempts, and that is what these videos will display. As a quick note, using a Tincture of Dexterity, or the Tincture strategy, should yield the same results as before. So if that is your go-to method to kill Behemoth, do not worry about a thing. As a quick review, the healing strategy involves having a sustaining potion running before you get hit with the first Ecliptic Meteor. Then, you have to use your Super Potion and Second Wind prior to taking the damage from the second Ecliptic Meteor in order to survive. The most important detail to the healing strategy back in Shadowbringers was that you were required to take food off after the first meteor hit, ideally right before the second meteor did damage. Reducing your maximum HP would mean you take less damage from Ecliptic Meteor, and also you have less total HP you need to heal back with your potions and sustaining potion. In Endwalker, because of the stat squish, you have less total HP overall, but your max and super potions still heal for roughly the same amount of HP it did in Shadowbringers. Thus, those potions will help you recover a larger percentage of HP per use. That factor is pretty huge, because when I returned to Endwalker on Machinist, I consciously decided to leave food on during Behemoth's Ecliptic Meteor phase and rely on the larger heal that a super potion would give me, which worked. This small adjustment to the healing strategy might make it a bit easier for those looking to use it. It's also worth noting that I messed up my rotation of Behemoth's Enrage by completely forgetting to use my turret, but it still worked out. I will now have the Lust and Bursting phase play out at normal speed, so you can see how they line up and compare on my Endwalker and Shadowbringer attempts. One big major note is both the Endwalker and Shadowbringer Behemoth attempt finished at nearly the same length of time. Percentages, and now I'm seeing 22.6. It's going to be kind of the key thing that we'll need later when we're going to manage his HP. 1, 2. I did Tactician and Potion right before Lust, so I can maintain my HP here. 3, that's 4 rather, and then 5. I'm gonna jump out, Potion up. We're at 19 right now. We're at still 19.1, 18, 17, 16.4. I'm just gonna auto from here. We want to push it down to like 15.1 if we can. Right now it is 15.8, 15.7, 15.5, 15.4, 15.2. I'm holding. So 15.2 is good. Okay, I'm gonna wait a second. Reassemble and go. Potion is actually perfect here. Super. Oh, that is comfy. Don't even need to take out food, not even close. 1, 2. I didn't drop my turret, I just realized that. 3, 4. I didn't need the turret. Here's the turret, I left it. Oh, you didn't need the turret, so that's good. Conclusion. As a very quick summary, the answer to is Machinist easier or harder in Endwalker is that it is basically the same in the grand scheme of things. I do not feel you have less of a chance to clear an Endwalker, but at the same time, Machinist did not gain anything significant from Endwalker to give it more of a chance. One very major disclaimer is that this video applies to Machinist and Machinist only. Bear in mind, many other jobs had adjustments to abilities and potencies, and those jobs may have a much different effect in Deep Dungeon for either better or worse. Since Machinist was the most popular go-to for the Necromancer title back in Shadowbringers, I did want to tackle this job as soon as I was able to. If you have any further comments, questions, or if you need any more clarity on anything mentioned in this video, be sure to let me know in the comments section and I'll try my best to answer. Good luck out there should you want to hunt down the Necromancer title in Endwalker on Machinist.